I'm Mark Golub. And of course, election 2016 is now all about the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia, where Hillary Clinton will be nominated to become President of the United States. I don't know how many of you had a chance to watch the first night of the convention on television, but wow. No matter what your party affiliation is, no matter which candidate you're leaning towards, last night's speakers were quite something, beginning with an address by the First Lady, Michelle Obama, who delivered one of the most moving and uplifting speeches in convention history, reminiscent of the spellbinding address given by Mario Cuomo in 1984. And what growth Michelle Obama has displayed. She's often been criticized for her remarks the night her husband was elected president, when she said it was the first time she felt proud of America. Last night, she ended her beautifully crafted remarks by reminding the nation that despite all the problems and inequities which still need to be addressed, and Bernie Sanders gave a long laundry list of all of them in great detail, the United States is still the greatest country on earth. And while she so subtly drew a contrast between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, there was no name-calling, no ugliness, no ad hominem attacks. In contrast to Elizabeth Warren, Michelle Obama simply hammered her theme that the great American story is leaving our country better for our children. And the image she drew of living in a house built by slaves, and now she watches her two daughters play with their dog on the lawn of the White House, epitomizes the glorious character of the United States of America. Anyway, a roster of Democratic all-stars spoke last night. Michelle Obama, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker spoke earlier. And as very impressive as Donald Trump's children were at the Republican National Convention, it was quite a contrast last night between the speakers that appeared on the rostrum of the two national conventions. Of course, at the very same time, the Democratic Convention was in some real turmoil. And while all the media pundits had predicted that the Republican Convention would be chaotic, lo and behold, the Democratic Convention is having its share of confusion and controversy with the ousting of DNC chairperson, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who of course is the most prominent Jewish member of Congress today. Congresswoman Schultz was forced to resign her position when WikiLeaks published a number of DNC emails confirming charges made throughout the primaries by Senator Bernie Sanders and his supporters that the DNC was actively supporting Hillary Clinton and had skewed things in her favor. One email that's being published everywhere was written by the DNC's CFO, Brad Marshall, which reads, "For Kentucky and West Virginia, can we get someone to ask his," meaning Bernie Sanders, "belief? Does he believe in God? He had skated on saying he was has a Jewish heritage. I think I read he's an atheist." And Sanders supporters, and there are nearly 2,000 Bernie Sanders delegates at the convention, they are really angry. And while the Democrats were smugly ridiculing the booing that went on when Ted Cruz refused to say he endorsed Donald Trump, they now have to eat crow and contend with similar expressions of anger from the pro-Sanders camp, many of whom are now saying they will either vote for Jill Stein of the Green Party or even for Donald Trump. So what's it all mean in real terms? Will the Debbie Wasserman Schultz DNC debacle have any real effect on anything at all? Has it affected the mood of the Democratic Convention on the floor? Will it affect the election itself? And what are Jewish leaders saying now? And is the fact that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is Jewish going to have any effect either in or on the American Jewish community? Well, to help give us a feel of how things are going inside the convention, we turn, as we so often do, to the outstanding Washington Bureau Chief of the JTA, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, Ron Kampeas, who's on our phones from Philadelphia. Ron, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, Ron, were you in the hall for Michelle Obama's speech?
I was, and like you say, it was, you described its qualities, but I'll tell you what the effect was. It was electrifying.
It was electrifying.
Everybody in the hall was utterly focused on it and was cheering all the way through.
Look, you and I have watched many convention speeches. You've covered virtually, I don't know, how many have you covered over the last few years, Ron?
I've been at every convention since 2004.
Okay. I was at Bill Clinton's first inaugural convention. I've covered some for the Russian television network that I work for. We know what it's like. Very often, even when people are speaking who have some name recognition and face recognition, those in the hall can be distracted. There seemed to be something unusual for me as I watched not only Michelle Obama speak, and I thought she was just out of this world, but also she seemed to have, as you said, the entire hall transfixed. But again, you were there, I wasn't. Again, give us a feel for the whole convention hall as she spoke.
Well, first of all, as you said, like even during compelling speakers, there's always chatter, friends catching up, gossiping about the speech. Even there was a very eloquent and moving advocate for the disabled and a young woman who is, what so-called anchor baby who spoke, and there were a lot of people who reacted very well. But there was talk throughout those speeches, not a peep throughout Michelle Obama's speech, except to react in cheers. And also, you noted there was booing. It was kind of a low booing, at least from where we were sitting up in the press gallery upstairs. It's a sports arena, so you're like in the upper seats. The booing didn't really dominate much of the proceedings, but it did completely disappear during Michelle Obama's.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so Ron, incidentally, I'm thinking to myself, we've seen the first African-American president. We could see the first woman president. And I thought to myself, I may be looking at the first woman African-American president one day. Do you think that's at all a possibility?
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz about that. She's an extremely capable person. She's a lawyer. She's been inside the White House for 8 years, just as Hillary had been. I don't know. It depends. I mean, she was so dedicated to bringing up her daughters, and that is why she played the role of a more traditional rather than a more, active first lady. And now her daughters are going to be grown up. So who knows? But I think that it's unlikely because people are saying enough with dynasties.
Yes.
The Bushes, the Clintons, Kennedys. There's a kind of a fatigue with it. So I'm not sure about that.
Okay. All right. So Ron, how has the revelation that the DNC did consciously work for Hillary's nomination and against Bernie Sanders, how's that played out among those attending the Democratic National Convention?
Well, people are furious. Let me put it. I would say, look, the Bernie Sanders people are furious. I think it fueled a lot of the booing yesterday.
Yes.
It got Debbie Wasserman Schultz removed from the stage. She was going to gavel it in. This is what she's been building up to during her 5 years as head of the DNC, and she did not. And even the Clinton people were very sort of disappointed, not wanting to be associated with her so much because of this. So there's that. On the other hand, there's like what you typically get as things sort of calm down there's a kind of a readjustment in terms of what was actually done. There was the emails definitely showed bias towards Hillary Clinton and against Bernie Sanders, but they also showed that the more obnoxious proposals, or any proposals at all to quash his campaign, like the one you mentioned, were quashed. There was at least enough of one adult in the room, at least. I don't know if it was Debbie Wasserman,
right,
but there was one adult in the DNC who was saying, no, you can't do these things. But there were a lot of not adults in the DNC who were proposing them and committing them to writing.
It's too bad that they were in writing, by the way, and it's too bad it reflects, again, not simply on the DNC, but on our political process. By the way, Debbie Wasserman Schultz was booed herself at a Florida State gathering, correct?
That's correct. Every morning the delegations meet for breakfast to strategize and to hear talks. That she came, and she was cheered when she walked in, and then as soon as she started speaking, there were about half the group started booing the Bernie Sanders backers.
You said Bernie Sanders people are furious. It's a stronger word than even I used. How do you know they're furious, Ron?
I mean, you just talk to them. You talk to them in the hallways. You hear what they're saying. I had one guy sitting behind me during Bernie Sanders' speech, and he was just yelling, "You should be the nominee." And you heard a lot of that. There was real anger and woundedness in the among the Bernie Sanders people. And as you walked out, there was even a delegation, a cluster of Bernie Sanders supporters shouting, "No, DNC, we won't vote for Hillary." And so there are those kinds of manifestations.
Fascinating. I heard people say Jill, not Hill, and they were referring to Jill Stein of the Green Party. What do you know of Jill Stein? And by the way, she has a Jewish-sounding name. Is Jill Jewish?
She's Jewish. She's definitely Jewish. She is. She backs the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. So she's definitely not in the pro-Israel camp.
Yes.
And it's funny because what you're saying about no Hill, just Jill, or whatever they were saying. As I was walking just a couple of hours ago through a square from one meeting to another, there was somebody touting Jill Stein, saying, "I vote for integrity." So the most recent Jewish thing that I saw Jill Stein do did not involve a lot of integrity. She put out a tweet on the day after Elie Wiesel died, praising him for the vision that he gave Americans and others in terms of warnings about genocide. And then because Wiesel was pro-Israel, and there were a lot of pro-Palestinians who really don't like him, and they started bombarding her with tweets, and she removed it. She deleted it. So, of course, you can't delete anything in today, so it's captured forever. But
yeah.
Talk about being, in terms of her accusing Hillary Clinton of being wishy-washy. that wasn't exactly a spineful thing to do.
Very interesting. But you do think people are at least threatening to vote for her or for even Donald Trump, yes?
Yes, but, the numbers range. As somebody I saw said that, who's close to both camps, said that it would be like maybe 90% would vote for Hillary and that 10% would vote for Trump or Stein or just not vote. It's interesting because there was a kind of evolution yesterday. I saw on TV, because the room was too crowded to get into, it was in the building where we're speaking now, Bernie Sanders talked before the actual convention to his supporters, and he was booed when he said vote for Hillary, when he got around to that.
Yes.
And then last night, as you said, he put out the litany of things that are wrong with America. And then he said 15 times that only Hillary Clinton could solve it. And he wasn't booed. I mean, I think there's a kind of an evolution in how Bernie Sanders supporters are treating this. And they're coming around to Hillary Clinton. I think that it was smart of Debbie Wasserman Schultz to quit. It was smart for the Clinton team to distance themselves from her, even though they're bringing her on as a Clinton surrogate. Making it clear that they were encouraging Debbie Wasserman Schultz to step down and not to speak at the convention. So people who back Bernie Sanders, I think, can distinguish. They have a new villain that they can focus on, Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Yes.
And that means that I think that a lot of the animosity towards Clinton is maybe receding.
Very interesting. By the way, how do people feel or the fact that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was immediately hired by the Hillary Clinton campaign?
I'm not hearing a lot of complaints about it from Bernie Sanders backers. I think it was just a matter of Clinton having been loyal to, Clinton being loyal to somebody who was loyal to her, and somebody who still commands a lot of respect among a certain class of woman Democrat and Jewish Democrat. You don't want to necessarily alienate those people.
It's interesting. I've heard Democrats say to me, the visual is not a good one, that if Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to resign or be fired as DNC chair because she was responsible for or on her watch things were done in a really inappropriate way, the last thing you want to do is bring her on formally to the Hillary Clinton campaign. That's what I've heard from Democrats, but evidently that's not what you're hearing in the hall.
No, I think that, it's just that the emphasis here, maybe that could emerge in the next few days, but with the coverage and with the chatter being so much about her humiliation in terms of her just being removed entirely from the agenda, that it kind of overwhelms the next bit of news, which is that now she's working for the Clinton campaign.
Okay.
And maybe, you're right, it might reemerge once she starts appearing as a surrogate for the Clinton campaign, if she appears prominently as a surrogate, if this thing with the email sticks.
Was Debbie Wasserman Schultz used as a sacrificial lamb here, Ron?
I don't think so, in the sense that, she's the boss of the DNC, and ultimately she's responsible for everything that comes across her desk, and for, she wasn't personally implicated in the worst emails. There were a couple in which she expresses anger at Bernie Sanders, but that's because there were tensions between them that were well known. But even if she isn't, implicated in the actual schemes, the buck stops here. She created she allowed the climate to be created that allowed for those emails.
Okay. Now, is the fact that she is Jewish relevant at all? Does it have any significance in the way in which anything is going to operate going forward?
I think that in every case, when you have such a senior person who is also deeply involved in the Jewish community removed, it's not good for the relationship between the organized Jewish community and the political party. And you saw that with Eric Cantor, a couple of years ago in 2014. It's less of a problem with Democrats because there are a lot of high-ranking Democrats that are Jewish that remain, like Jerry Nadler and Elliot Engel and a range of others. But she was the most prominent, deeply involved Jewish Democrat, and now that avenue is gone. The Jewish community in the past, I remember when I first started reporting this, Donna Brazil had just finished her stint, had very good relations with her, and she's the interim DNC chairwoman. But it's just not the same thing when you have somebody who is as deeply involved in the community as Debbie Wasserman Schultz was.
But I still need to understand, what's the practical consequence of what you're saying?
It's a DNC chairperson is a very busy person, and so they prioritize how they take their calls, when they take their calls, whom they take their calls from, and it might not even be conscious, but you might have to wait a day for a call back, that kind of thing. Okay.
You don't think it's going to be seen as the Jew is the one who screwed up?
Oh, it depends on who you're talking to. I see on social media already there are anti-Semites who are saying that, but no, not generally within the within the Democratic Party. There are a lot of every faction within the Democratic Party has Jewish leaders that are attached to it. So certainly, the people who are angry at the Democrats for screwing up in this case are the people who are very much in favor of a Jewish Democrat named Bernie Sanders. So
yes.
I don't think that's the case.
Okay. So talk to me now about the Democratic platform. There were Jews who were very disturbed by an attempt made to put into the platform a plank criticizing Israel for occupying Gaza and calling on Israel to stop its occupation. Of course, Israel is not occupying Gaza, is out of Gaza completely. But even though the plank was voted down, What does it say about the spirit of the party that such a plank would even be considered and receive some very significant support? What do you hear about that from Jewish leaders you talk to?
There is a concern. It's not an immediate concern. Hillary Clinton is the nominee. She's got long-standing relationships with the Jewish community and the pro-Israel community. Her views on Israel are well known. She gets along certainly better with the Israeli establishment and with the Prime Minister Netanyahu than Barack Obama did. So things are only going to get better there. And she's also a known quantity, unlike Donald Trump, who's perceived as being a little more volatile. But further down the line, they see an evolution where younger Democrats don't feel the same attachment to Israel that their parents did. They see Israel in the role of oppressor, maybe. And how do you counter that? How do you deal with that? Every single Jewish organization I know is worried about it. They're dedicating resources to it. AIPAC has a staff of people that are running progressive outreach. Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL, the director, has made it his mission to reach out to that sector, younger progressives. There is a lot of concern.
Yes. Bernie Sanders made a big deal of the fact that the most progressive platform in Democratic history was approved at this convention. Normally, the word progressive, especially on the extreme left, makes Jews who care about Israel, who worry for Israel's future, very uncomfortable. And I don't know if there's anything you can tell us about the nexus between the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and its apparent growing influence within the Democratic Party as a whole, and how that plays out in terms of the way the Democratic Party will view Israel and how it will speak about Israel going forward.
When I took the shuttle from here, where I am, down to the Wells Fargo Center where the convention is, I was on a bus with people. There was a woman with a sheet of stickers saying, I support Palestinian human rights, and another one saying, progressive for Palestine. It was interesting. It was a bus full of young people. She was passing them around the bus. Some people eagerly put up the stickers and put them on their lanyards, and some people politely declined them. It was about half and half, so not exactly a scientific sample, but you see where there's a trend within the Democratic Party.
Yes. You and I understand that traditionally the Jewish American community has gone 70% for the Democratic nominee. And people are now saying that this year it could be far greater. There are some people who are predicting even 90% of American Jews are going to vote Democratic in this election. And you and I have talked on prior programs that there are two very powerful drives in the American Jewish community. There's a social concern and a feeling that Jews want to be on the cutting edge of every movement that favors justice for all, and that the Democratic Party is viewed as one that is committed to social reform and social justice in a way that the Republican Party is not associated with it. At the same time, the second drive among some Jews, far fewer, is the security and safety and well-being in the state of Israel and the U.S.-Israeli relationship. And there's some real feeling there that the Republican Party is stronger in that arena than is the Democratic Party. I've asked this to you before, but I'm asking you now, as you've seen the Republican convention play out, you're now at the Democratic convention. Your best sense, Ron, how are American Jews who care about Israel going to be swayed one way or the other, given on the one hand the Democratic platform, and given on the other hand the Republican Party took out of its platform explicit support for the two-state solution, saying that the party should now work out a peace agreement between themselves. And that's a stark contrast to where the Democratic Party and its platform seems to be going. But it's a long way of asking you, how do you view the tension and the direction of the American Jewish community, that portion of whom is very committed to the well-being and safety of the state of Israel?
The voters that you described, the single-issue pro-Israel voters, I think it would have been clearer if this had been a Ted Cruz or a Marco Rubio. It's not so clear for them when it's Donald Trump. And, part of it is, I think there are three elements to that. Part of it is his peregrination, I like to say, on Israel issues, where at one point he was saying he would be neutral, and he has not committed to re-upping defense funding for Israel, and then at other times he seems to be very pro. And part of it is also just the bigger picture. You want the people, pro-Israel Jews tend to fall in because of the history of what happened in Europe in World War II. They tend to fall into an interventionist camp. And this is a president who believes that America should be pretty much a candidate, that is, who believes that America should be pretty much in retreat. So, bigger picture, they're very wary of him. And I think that even the Jews who make Israel their single issue are also susceptible to the things that drive the so-called social justice Jews. And so, because there's been such controversy over things that Trump has said about the judge with the Mexican parents who is trying one of his cases having to do with Trump University, and with a range of other issues that have gotten them into trouble with minorities, I think that they're looking at that as well.
Very interesting. And you always bring such insight every time you and I speak. I can't thank you enough. I've said it to you before, I'll say it to you again. You're a real fan favorite now on JBS, and you're a favorite of mine, so I am always grateful when you give us some time. Enjoy the rest of the convention. We'll speak after that, and then we'll continue our conversations often. But I thank you, my friend, very much.
Thank you.
Be well. That was Ron Kampeas, Washington Bureau Chief of the JTA, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency. He always brings very interesting observations whenever we speak. Finally, I want to make one note. I'm consciously aware of how journalism, television and print, deals with this election. And I've been criticized from both sides of the aisle. I am not taking sides here. My side is for journalism to be appropriate when it reports on political elections, and it should tell us the story and let us, to the extent to which it's possible, make our own decisions. And many, many people have been turned off by the partisan reporting we see on MSNBC and on Fox or in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or on internet sites that purport to be reporting the news. And an example for me was CNN's putting up a graphic under Mike Pence when he was accepting the Republican nomination for vice president, listing the ways in which he disagreed with Donald Trump's policies. I'll be very interested to see, I hope you'll be interested to see, if CNN does the same thing when Tim Kaine accepts the Democratic nomination for president. And on 60 Minutes, which profiled both tickets the Sunday before each convention. While Scott Pelley did ask Hillary whether she took responsibility for poor security at the Benghazi compound, he did not ask Tim Kaine to explain how he deals with the fact that he disagrees with Hillary Clinton on matters such as free trade, TPP, especially abortion, whereas Leslie Stahl spent so much time of 60 Minutes in her meeting with Donald Trump and Mike Pence, asking Pence how he would deal with his disagreements with Donald Trump. So when you watch television, you have a right to be as partisan as you want, and you can choose channels which reflect your own partisan perspectives. But if you're interested in journalistic integrity, watch to see how the various television networks do report each candidate, and are they fair in their reporting. We'll continue to follow all these stories that surround election 2016. As always, my thanks to our director, Sloan Copeland, production coordinator, Serge Goldberg, editor, Dennis Golan, JBS's associate director, Dara Golub, and the producer of election 2016, Carol Lilienthal. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.